Okay, rest day is so back. Corinne Malcolm not here today, but instead we are joined by two very capable co-hosts here. The Sub Hub co-hosts also Dani Moreno. Dani, how are you?
I'm doing really good. I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. And of course, your co-host EmKay Sullivan. EmKay, nice to see you.
Hello. Thanks for having us.
Yeah. So this is going to be sort of a sub ultra distance focused rest day show. There's a lot to talk about. There's a lot of fun races that have just happened and that are coming up this weekend, that being Sierre Zinal. Everybody's got to go get their fantasy picks in. But before we launch into the docket, there was some big breaking news this morning on Instagram. The great Kilian announced his big and much anticipated summer project here in the United States of America. Dani, do you want to give the quick high-level details of it, or should I?
I could give a little bit because I do have to say a couple weeks ago, he's messaged me. And when Killian messages you, you kind of sit out of your seat. You know, even though I've met him in person a couple of times, but I woke up to a DM in WhatsApp from Kilian and I kind of took a double look. But as you may have seen, I had a short 2-second feature in his video, which I felt starstruck to do. But yeah, essentially the GOAT, EmKay and I call him the versatile GOAT because he can literally do anything. But he has decided to take his later half of the 2025 schedule and focus it here in America, which I think all Americans, North Americans, are very excited to, host him in a way, where he's going to attempt to do all of the 14ers in the lower 48. So that's excluding Alaska and Hawaii. So the continental 48, and do it all human powered, which, I mean, living in California in the Eastern Sierra, that's already such a big feat, but to want to connect all of them and via, human powered is, the only person who would dream up such an idea is the Kilian Jornet.
Yeah. The versatility GOAT is a good way to put it. And this is going to put that versatility to the test. As you said, fully human powered. That means he's going to be doing a couple thousand miles of cycling probably, and another couple thousand miles of hiking, running, scrambling, etc. Much versatility. EmKay, anything you want to add here before we launch into the docket?
I just think it's so cool because, Francois just did like the Nolan's 14ers and it feels like Killian was like, hold my beer. I'm actually going to just touch all of them. So I'm excited.
Yeah, that was my comment. That was my comment on his Instagram today. I said, instead of Nolan's 14, it's Killian's 96. Yeah.
It's so many 14ers, but that'll be awesome.
Yeah, so cool. Well, Killian's going to come on the show next week to talk a little bit more about it. And yeah, you mentioned Francois Nolan's attempt, which he intentionally did not carry a tracker for. I wonder if Killian's going to be carrying a tracker for this massive project, because I'm sure there are many American trail fans who would love to join him for a summit if anybody could keep up. All right, launching into it, I want to talk about 3 specific things here with you two, the undisputed experts of sub-ultra distance trail running, sort of anything 50K and below. Dani Moreno, EmKay Sullivan are plugged in. The weekend before last was Speedgoat. I want to start there. And then last weekend was Pitz Alpine, which I think was the 7th stop on the Golden Trail World Series circuit. And this weekend coming up, Sierre Zinal, objectively the most competitive trail running race in the world. So we'll break that down also. Starting with Speedgoat, the big top line headline from the event was Jenn Lichter, who is on an absolute heater. Maybe EmKay, get us started on Speedgoat and specifically focus on Jen's performance and the season she's having so far, because really she is in Trail Runner of the Year contention at this point.
I know. I think you guys put out your Troy watch like the week before that or something, and Dani and I were like, Jenn Lichter needs to be on that list. But Jen's obviously had a fantastic year. She started off at Trans Gran Canaria Marathon, which she won for the 2nd year in a row. She followed that up by coming to Broken Arrow, which doubled as the selection race for the U.S. short trail team, where she won and set a course record broke her own course record by like 10 minutes. And then shows up to Speedgoat and is the first woman to run under 6 hours at this iconic race. And she kind of she in true Jenn Lichter fashion leads wire to wire and just makes it look like it's nothing almost.
So strong.
It's not. It's like We are so happy for her. It's not surprising. I mean, very, a testament to kind of the Jim Walmsley focus. Like Jenn has been running both of those races for a while. Well, maybe Broken Arrow just the once, but Speedgoat, she's gone there and she was on course record pace before, took a wrong turn. Now this is really actually tangentially feeling Jim Walmsley-esque, goes back again, runs a good time. And then, this third time knocks it out of the park. And so, yeah, it's really cool to see athletes pick the races that most fire them up and just stay at it, year after year. And we all in the sub ultra space, short trail space, like really believe that Jenn Lichter is a great mountain runner. She can also do tons of runnable trails, but that truly is kind of like her sparkling diamond in her, jewelry set. And so it's cool to see her be the one to, set the new bar at both of these, what I would say are becoming more and more like our historic US staple mountain 50Ks, because they've always been in the conversation. But I think especially in these last couple of years, athletes who have performed on the world stages, and have podiumed and top 5 are now jumping into Broken Arrow and Speedgoat more and more each year. And so I think it's cool to have her, set that new bar in both of those races.
Yeah. And speaking of her following her motivation, before we move on and touch on some of the other results from Speedgoat, I remember when we did that panel after the podium performance, when we had you, Dani, Helena Faulkner, and Jenn Lichter in together, and we were all talking, looking forward towards the World Championships. UTMB last week put out the full start list for the World Final events. Jenn Lichter's name was on the OCC list, but it sounds like she's made an announcement that instead she is going to focus solely on Worlds. Maybe EmKay, you could talk through a little bit about that sort of consideration and whether or not you have any inside intel on Jenn's decision making.
Yeah, I read her Instagram post and texted her like pretty much immediately, and I was like, props to you, man. I wish more people would set aside like the time and respect that I think World Championships deserves. Katie Scheid also just announced that she's doing the same thing, because like it's something like 3.5 weeks or something between, OCC or CCC or UTMB, whatever you decide to do, and the World Championships. And this World Championships course is not like a joke course. It's going to be one of the hardest things people do all year. And so to see Jenn, because admittedly, I tried to convince her to take that short trail spot because I was like, dude, you got to go back and try to win this. But she is like putting all of her eggs in that long trail basket. And part of that is not risking a performance at Worlds by maybe getting something out of OCC.
It's so interesting. And it's very cool and testament to what Dani said about Jenn following her motivation to, she would be one of the top contenders in the short trail for a gold medal. And instead she's sort of taking a risk and betting on herself and following an intuition to instead do the long trail team, which I think is interesting. Dani, anything else you want to add to that?
No, just like keeping eyes on Jenn, because I mean, she's one of those athletes, when she identifies a goal, she is all in. And so I am really excited to see her take on the long trail. Like EmKay, admittedly a little brokenhearted she won't be in short trail, because I think she would have a really strong chance this year. But, Grayson Murphy is kind of tangent to that too. Like 2-time world champion. She's like, you know what? I want to move on to something different. Like this is what's sparking my interest now. And you really, I think as a professional athlete, like more and more, it's important to follow that fire and that thing that excites you. It makes training so much easier, so much more sustainable, not just like in the season, in the moment, but year after year is picking stuff that excites you. So yeah, I think Jenn, very much on the Troy ballot. She's of like the top 3 women, I would say, in my opinion, who are short trail athlete of the year contenders in this moment. But as we know, a lot can always happen in the second half of the year.
Yeah, it seems like she really has established herself as the best American sort of like 50K runner, mountainous 50K runner, at least. The one blemish, I guess, on her resume this year was a DNF at the Canyons 50K, which I'm not entirely sure. I can't remember exactly what happened.
I think
to
it was
her there,
stomach issues.
Man, bouncing back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, obviously everybody has bad days once in a while, but there have been many more good days overshadowing that one little disappointment. Jenn Lichter having an incredible season, running sub 6 hours at Speedgoat. Speaking of Grayson Murphy, let's bang through the rest of the top 5. You guys can add enter any color you want. In second place was Emma Cook-Clark from Canada, who ran 6:01:05, also one of the fastest times ever. Grayson Murphy, only a minute and a half behind her, 6:02:36. Last year's winner, Jasmine Lowther, also Canadian, 6:15:10. And Robin Lesh rounded out the top five, 6:18:48. Any other color you guys want to add to the rest of that top five?
I would like to point out.
Yeah, so
Sorry.
it's okay. I'll add it really quick. Emma Cook-Clark, that was her debut 50K. So she's run a lot of sky running races that, duration-wise come close-ish to Speedgoat because they're just, miniature sky race. EmKay and I have talked about that on our podcast. It's a big sky race in Canada. It's a short race distance-wise, long race duration-wise. But yeah, Emma Cook-Clark coming out and running that in her 50K debut, she is definitely one to watch. And then Grayson Murphy just cutting down on Jenn. I mean, going from Broken Arrow to Speedgoat, just big testament to her to trying something new. And I think she's going to soon be in the conversation of great American 50K runners, especially on the World Championship course. I think she's going to be one to bet on because Grayson can run technical extremely well.
Yeah.
So.
And I was going to point out the fact that Grayson's margin to Jenn in this race was much shorter in a race that was almost an hour and 15 minutes longer. And so I think, she's got 250K-ish distances under her belt now. I agree with Dani. Grayson is definitely somebody to watch on that short trail team now.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be sweet for her to get her third gold medal?
That would be crazy.
Yes.
Yeah. Third medal would be incredible in a different distance. Yeah.
And the surprise to me was actually the UTMB list coming out. Jasmine Lowther is running OCC this year.
Yeah.
Compared to CCC. So that was a big surprise for me because I've always seen her as kind of a 100K specialist.
Right. Yeah, it is interesting. And it looks like, I know Jasmine had a little bit of an injury earlier in the season, but it looks like building some good momentum at the right time, leading into what I'm assuming would be her biggest goal of the year, running OCC. And that jumped out to me too, as I looked through the lists too. Talking about the men real quick before we move on, I'll just bang through the top five here again. So Ryan Becker also carrying a good amount of momentum here. Let's spend a little time talking about him. He won. He was only 6 seconds ahead of Eric Sorensen, aka Papa Eric. Shout out Eric from Ouray, Colorado. Anthony Williams was just behind him in 5:20:08. Adam Loomis and Grant Barnett continue their friendly rivalry. Those two Utah local trail studs. They were fourth and fifth in 5:22:44 and 5:24:26. Who wants to get us started on Becker?
It's just so exciting to see Ryan winning this race because we talk about him pretty frequently on the podcast. Ryan Becker is pretty much always podium contention for an American 50K, but he seems to always just miss that top spot. Obviously he qualified for our US team and I'm super stoked to see him on that team, but to see him actually get the win at Speedgoat, awesome day for him.
Yep. Dani?
Yeah. And for me, the man is not sponsored. It's just the thing I want to shout from the rooftops. To me, this is one of the best free agents we have to offer in America right now. So sponsors, if you're looking for a very consistent podium finisher, this is your guy. He just always shows up.
Yeah. And Rachel Entrekin
shows
was on
a lot of versatility as well.
Yeah. Rachel Entrekin was on the podcast 2 weeks ago. We talked about her unsponsored status. Similar to Ryan Becker, we were hanging out with him and Telluride earlier this summer, and both Harmony and I have been doing a lot of back channeling with various brand representatives for both of them, hoping that they can have the opportunities that they've definitely both earned. But Becker, third place at Broken Arrow, earned a spot to Team USA. I think he's probably the only unsponsored runner on Team USA this year. Follows it up with a big win at Speedgoat. A really, really awesome result for Ryan and happy to see it. Any other notes you guys want to make on the rest of the men's top five?
I don't think so. A lot of local Utah athletes that are kind of always up in the mix at Speedgoat, still showing up, doing their thing.
Yeah.
I know Grant Barnett got 5th place, but he ran 15 minutes faster or something this year. Same exact place. So, yeah. These races just keep getting faster. It's exciting to watch.
Yeah. Speedgoat, I should just say. I mean, that race has been around for a long time now. It's a freaking beast of a course. It's very, very hard race. I've done it twice. And the first time I was like, I'm never doing this again. And then I did it again, mistakenly. And then I was like, all right, yeah, definitely not doing this one again. I mean, it's an awesome event.
I did
mistakenly.
Yeah, it's because I was training for UTMB. I think it was in 2017. So I was like, all right, I'm going to go do Speedgoat as a long training day, and it just absolutely obliterated me again. But it's an awesome race, a very tough mountain 50K. And now, kind of feels like an American classic at this point. So
absolutely.
Shout out to Speedgoat, Carl Meltzer, for building that legacy. And of course, it's part of the UTMB World Series now, which will, I think, further reinforce its importance on the calendar for years to come. All right, I want to talk about Pits Alpine, but I feel like important context setting before we get to it is to talk about a fun thing that I'm sure you two will have interesting color on, and that is the Milimani runners. As we have seen, one of the biggest trends, I think, in sub-ultra distance racing is the emergence of East Africa, Kenyan athletes specifically finally making a huge impact on the sport of trail running, and especially called in the last three or 4 years. We're seeing it a lot in the Golden Trail races, the World Mountain Running Championship Series. And, there's some interesting sort of team formation that's taking place. So with that as our little preamble, Dani, tell the listeners a little bit about the Milammani runners, their history, and what impact they're having on the sport right now in sub-ultra.
Yeah, so the Milammani runners are a Kenyan-based team currently sponsored by Salomon. And if you check out their Instagram, they actually have 110,000 followers, which is crazy.
Yeah.
And from what I understand, it's, athletes that they've recruited from the roads and track, or Joylene Kipniego, who won Sierre Zinal in her debut trail race last year. I think that was like her first race ever. I'd have to get fact checked on that one. But yeah, it's interesting. They all train together and then they pick and choose races where a group of them will go to. So as we saw Austria this week, there definitely was a big presence there. And it seems that they've been mostly, not surprisingly, focused on the Golden Trail World Series because they are sponsored by Salomon. But I honestly forget who they were sponsored by but Salomon is their current sponsor.
So I think the closest analog to this Milimani crew is the Run Together team, which is sponsored by On, that has produced the likes of Patrick Kipneno, Philmon Kiriago. I think Joyce and Jeru was on that team for a bit before she moved over to normal. Yeah, Falaris Kasang. So EmKay, add some color to this, because I think what I'm trying to get at here is, the fact that brands are now sponsoring African, specifically trail running teams, is a very new phenomenon. And I think On kind of has pioneered it with the Run Together team. Now Salomon with the Milammani runners. Are we witnessing the emergence of a new trend here?
We'll have to see. I think it makes sense that Salomon is putting their brand behind Milammani, because for the last 2-3-ish years, On has been dominating a Salomon sponsored Golden Trail World Series, with these big finishes up front, especially on the men's side. So them trying to inject another team into that spotlight, like we saw at Pitz Alpine, I think is obviously very beneficial to them if they can figure out how to get those athletes winning. But I don't know if we'll ever get that same kind of team training group situation anywhere but in East Africa. It seems like there aren't any Europeans interested in it. In the US, we just have too many people spread out over, too many states. Love to see something like that, but it just doesn't seem like there's enough financial incentive outside of East Africa for that to take place.
Yeah. So in the US, there's the On Athletic Club that trains in Boulder. Famously, the Bowerman Track Club was an institution for Nike that was mostly based in
And they're
Portland.
investing in 3 new teams kind of spread out over the US right now on the track and field side.
Yeah. So it's cool to see Salomon take this model that has worked so well in track and field and really make an investment around a specifically trail running oriented team. And as you said, Dani, 110,000 followers on Instagram. I'll make sure to link to it in the show notes of today's episode so that our listeners can go follow if they don't already. Really great at storytelling. It's great marketing for the brand. If you thinking about Eliud Kipchoge, right? Like his team, the NN team, I think is based somewhere in E10 or the Rift Valley of Kenya. And I don't know, could it be that we start seeing more trail running teams with brand sponsorships begin to funnel the pipeline of African talent into the sport? It's really, really interesting to see. And I think specifically, maybe before we move on, it could be interesting to get your guys' perspective on this too. Of course, you both have your own independent sponsors yourselves, but looking at how brands are approaching sub ultra is pretty interesting in and of itself. Obviously, we've just talked about now the Milimani runners and Solomon. I think Brooks is really investing heavily. We'll talk about Taylor Stack and Anna Gibson here later in the show. But anyway, it does seem like a lot of brands right now are looking to sub ultra distance races, things like the Golden Trail World Series, as a way to build a pipeline of talent for their brands for years to come, sort of building with these younger, faster athletes and hopefully can help support them in a very long career, starting with short course. Anything you guys want to add there to the brand landscape and sponsorship in sub ultra?
It does seem like, we saw Brooks kind of invest in their European short trail team first. And then this year we had a big investment in what felt like young American short trail athletes. And I think I'm very excited to see that, just because I agree with you. I think those brands are more likely to hold on to those athletes for a longer period of time, which is good for the athlete, but also good for the brand if they can kind of pick these athletes up earlier when they're doing short trail and build with them through their career.
Dani, anything else you want to add on this team concept or the brands before we start talking about Pitz Alpine?
It's just going to be interesting to see the direction that the brands continue to go. Because like EmKay said, Brooks has made a very clear effort to grab these younger athletes. And admittedly, I haven't seen that from other brands yet, like as big of a intentional push to grab those collegiates or people who are recently graduated. And so, I'm just interested to see if brands like Hoka or Terex, start focusing more on that kind of futures, or if they kind of stick to once you perform, then let's talk, which seems to be kind of the bigger brands' approach to the sport right now. But I think it's interesting. The co-location thing I know has been a topic for so long, and I think it's just tough when you're not getting someone straight out of college, because, they start to have a family. Maybe they already start working. It becomes such a larger effort to move your entire life as you get older and older. And so, I think that would take a lot of money, honestly, to start any co-located team in the trail space.
Yeah, it would be a fun investment, right? It'd be hard to see a path towards making a return on it. But if a big brand were to buy a house in Flagstaff and hire a couple full-time content video editors, things like that, you could see a very cool trail team emerging out of, one of those locations, a Flagstaff or a Boulder especially. But really fun thought experiment for us here as we start to actually talk about what's happening. Last weekend, Pits Alpine, the 7th stop in the Golden Trail World Series. It was a really interesting race. I think most notably before the event, we had some important scratches off the list, including the series leaders on both sides, El Hussein El Azawi and Madalena Floria, both opted not to compete, probably looking ahead towards Sierre Zinal and wanting to stay fresh. Also, Joyce and Jeru was a notable scratch. Patrick Kipnano, Philemon Kiriago, Sarah Alonso, I think, is dealing with injury. So we had a few of the superstars and those that are leading in the standings not take the start list, but it was still a very interesting, very exciting race, and it opened up opportunities for some new names to put their, put a result on the scoreboard. I want to start with Naomi Lang because I don't know much about her. I think I first learned her name after the Mont Blanc Marathon, where she was 3rd just last month or in June. Maybe Dani, you could get us started on Naomi Lang. What should our listeners know about this young, seems like really talented runner from the UK.
Yeah, so Naomi originally sparked mine EmKay's attention was last year at the European Championships. I believe she did the up-down, and there was a really cool video of her running downhill, and she was just navigating it like a beast. And I believe she for sure finished in the top 10, but I can't remember which place exactly. But that's when EmKay and I were like, that is one to watch. Like, she just looked so comfortable on very, very, very technical terrain. And then going into this year, we saw that she was picked up by Solomon, and they were featuring her in some training videos, running with Sophia Lockley, running with Malin Osa, two superstars who have already proven themselves on the Golden Trail World Series. So it was obvious that that's kind of where they were slotting her to go, this year. So yeah, honestly, seeing the conditions, I'm not surprised that this was her breakout race. Really cool to see. Once again, if you see the Golden Trail World Series Instagram, there's a really cool video of her navigating the technical downhill, and she just looks so comfortable. It would be interesting to see I wouldn't be surprised if she had a fell running background, as we see a lot of beastly UK runners have, and being just so comfortable on that really boggy and muddy stuff. But the girl can do it all. She could run fast and she could run technical. So I think going forward, she is a name to always consider, in your top 10.
Especially looking ahead towards Sierre Zinal, but we'll get there in a second. EmKay, anything you want to add?
I was just going to add that she's only 25. So, we got a lot of years of Naomi running short trail coming up, I think.
Unbelievable. So I guess we should make it explicitly clear. Naomi Lang won the Pits Alpine race on the Golden Trail World Series, 49.51. It looks like she was about 30 seconds ahead of Malin Osa, a name that Dani just mentioned. Malin, I think, feels like a name that we will likely see for the next 10 years or more. I think she's probably also in her mid-20s. She's already had a couple of really strong seasons. She's Spanish, and I think she has competed in the US at a couple of the Golden Trail events, though her name was probably going to be new to many of our listeners. EmKay, you want to share a little bit about Malin?
Malin is 23. So again, another just like young gun. I mean, she was young when she came into the sport like 2 years ago, and now she's still like such a small little girl in my head. But I mean, she was second at Zagama last year, had a really rough summer with her mom passing away. But prior to that, she had finished on the podium a couple of times here in the US. She's back this year, did decently well. Dani, do you remember how she did at Zagama? Because off the top of my head, I can't. Okay.
I'll look it up.
Yeah, she was top 3 again this year.
Yeah, she was third. And again, still only 23, and comes to this Pitz Alpine Glacier Trail, which is kind of like right up her alley. She's also a very good technical runner. And we just love to see a 25-year-old and a 23-year-old duking it out up front.
Yeah, so cool. Okay, in third place was Andreen.
They will be.
Go ahead, Dani.
Sorry, I was going to say, I think they will be a fun matchup for, the next half decade to come in these very technical races in Golden Trail World Series.
So in third place was Andreen Benjamin, new name to me, 152.28. Do we know anything about this Norwegian star?
That's a new name to me too.
Cool. Yeah. Fourth place was Maria Fuentes, another Spaniard. Fifth place was Faith Kiplagat, I think one of the Milammani crew, sitting in fifth place there. Moving over to the men quickly. Speaking of Milimani, Timothy Kibet wins the race. I guess we should just cut to the chase and say 4 out of the top 5 men were Kenyan. And I think 3 of those 4 were Milammani runners. So that's why I wanted to wedge that subject in before we got to these results. But Timothy Kibet won in 132.43, only 4 seconds ahead of Samuel Kiprotich, 132.47, which reminds me, I don't think we've seen a Golden Trail race on the men's side be decided by more than 5 seconds in like 2 years at this point. Every single race comes down to a sprint finish in the finishing chute. It's insane.
It is insane. And I've been talking about how bored I am of it, but at least this time it's different athletes.
Yeah. It's not El Hussein, Patrick, and Philemon or some combination of those 3 that are. Yeah.
And I feel like Timothy Kibet is like a relatively new name because we know Kevin Kibet, but like, have we seen Timothy on the Golden Trail?
I mean, I havenent. That's why I think this is really interesting.
That I can remember, to be honest.
We could start seeing just like, hey, Dani, I think we're having connection issues with you. So anyway. Point being, coming back to the Milimani conversation, is we could start seeing like a lot of these names that none of us have ever known or don't recognize start to become, start putting up big results like Timothy Kibet did at Pits Alpine. Let's spend a minute talking about Taylor Stack. Okay. So the lone non-African in the top 5 was the young American Taylor Stack. I think he lives in Fort Collins, Colorado. He finished 3rd place, 1:33.40. And he's part of this Brooks crew that we just mentioned. He landed on my radar after his 4th place finish at the Broken Arrow 23K in 2024. And he's sort of slowly putting together a really interesting sub-ultra distance career for himself. EmKay, get us started on Taylor Stack.
Yeah, I mean, he recently was 3rd at the Sunapee Scramble US Championships, which was the up-down qualifier. And I think to some people that may have still been a surprise, but if you've been paying attention, like Taylor Stack has been kind of, like slowly building his way into this. And then he chose not to come back and try to make the VK team, but he did compete at the 23K, which was a Golden Trail event, and finished 6th. I thought this was an even more impressive result from him at this Pitz Alpine Glacier. But at the same time, I'm not super surprised because the course was shortened, and it seems like the shorter the race, almost the better. So I'm really excited to see how he does at Sierre Zinal first off, but also at the World Championships this fall.
Yep. Really interesting. And he comes from the Western State University program, I think, that has developed a lot of interesting talent like Jeshrin Small, Cole Campbell, I think Joan De Leon, sort of loosely affiliated. Cade Michael, I think, was part of that crew too. So though he lives in Fort Collins now, I'm pretty sure Taylor Stack has some of that Gunnison and Western State University lineage. And they are really putting together a great crew coming out of that program. All right, Dani has dropped off here. We'll see if she comes back, but that was Pits Alpine. I don't know if there's any other stories, EmKay, that you want to get to from the race last weekend in Austria before we start talking about Sierre Zinal.
I think the main thing is seeing Madalena and Joyce and El Hussein drop means that they are very obviously focusing on Sierre Zinal. Seeing somebody like Patrick drop, it's like, meh, he kind of usually competes in a WMRA the weekend before Sierre Zinal anyways. But El Hussein hasn't had a good day at Sierre Zinal in a lot of years, so he's obviously trying to have a good day this coming weekend.
Yep. And that's going to be exciting to watch. Okay, so let's talk about Sierre Zinal. I'm just pulling up a couple of stats here because I think this is going to be interesting for our audience. One of the things that people might remember who paid attention to our Broken Arrow coverage was that we talked a lot about, the competitiveness of Broken Arrow, how it's improved over time, compared it against Western States. And in doing that analysis, Travis, the Freetrail's Advanced Analytics Department, as we joke, created a cool visual to sort of help us understand how Broken Arrow compares to Western States. And he added Sierre Zinal into this visual as a way to kind of just benchmark things. And what it did was really reinforce just how competitive Sierre Zinal is every year. I think we can safely say that it is objectively the most competitive trail race of the year, which is actually quite interesting in a sport that, most, I guess, like get the most media attention is focused around things like Western States and UTMB. And then like this year, we're thinking about the World Championships and stuff. But Sierre Zinal, even with the World Championships, might be the most competitive race of the season. And again, it's happening this weekend in Switzerland. So last year, for example, Sierre Zinal, the top 25 men's athletes in Sierre Zinal had an average UTMB index of 905. Western States, the top 25 runners had an average UTMB index of 870. If we move to the women now, last year, the top 25 had an average UTMB index of 762, where Western States was 77. So I just wanted to start there, EmKay, just sort of like context setting of why Sierre Zinal is significant. And really it is because it's become this melting pot of road athletes versus mountain athletes, short course versus sort of mid distance, and it brings together the best in the sport.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say it's this perfect like intersection of road and trail because it is like The course itself is very, very steep in the beginning, but then it's super runnable in the second half. And as we've learned from watching people run uphill races, short trail races, like if you are fast over flat, you're likely to be a pretty good VK athlete as well if you train for it. And so not only is it that great intersection between the two, but it's one of the oldest races in our sport, actually. I think it's on year 52. It's either 51 or 52 at this point, which is basically the same as Western States. And it is like just such a big part of the community in that area. Not only is there this massive elite race where you could finish 28th like myself and look back and be like, okay, that actually wasn't that bad of a performance. But also there's people who go out there and they walk the course every year. There's joggers, there's elite athletes, there's all these different like segments of the race that are so important to the community in this valley that I think make it so special. But yeah, the competitiveness at Sierre Zinal hasn't gone anywhere in a while, and it's not going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah, I think also it's just like a fun nexus in our sport. It's where it's not so scary for athletes, historically who have great road results to be like, I'll sign up for that one. Like that looks approachable. And like I like to tell my road friends, it's like the Boston Marathon is your Sierre Zinal instead of saying the Sierre Zinal is our Boston Marathon. But I really think they both kind of carry that just strong history that people are so attracted to, like the lore of, okay, you have to run this incredibly difficult course. Who made that up? Like, why are we doing this? The sort of race where you kind of question why you're in it in the first place. And then you get it once you're there.
Yeah. I think it was 2 years ago.
I would just like to add that I think another reason that they do bring such deep fields is that even though it's not like big money, you make money for time bonuses. So like on the women's side, if you run under 3 hours, if you run under 3:05, 3:10, 3:15, 3:20, like you can make a little bit of money, even if you're like 15th or 16th. And I think that helps a ton.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. Okay. So when we did sort of a Sierre Zinal preview, I think it was 2 years ago when the three of us convened for something similar to this, we talked about the course, and we've already kind of touched on it here already in today's episode too. But I think the top line is that it's about a 30K race, but you start with a double VK. You start with a 6,000 foot climb, and then the rest of the trail, as I understand it, even though you do still have some climbing and descending, is rather non-technical and fast. So it does reward runners with a versatile skill set. EmKay, what do you want to share about the course specifically, and why is it the great equalizer?
I mean, I think the most important part of the course is that you almost have to be like in the position you want to be in halfway up that climb, or you're kind of out of it, because people are always like, oh, it's like double VK into runnable half marathon. But that runnable half marathon is still like this really awful douche grade. And by the time you've gotten there, you've already run 6,000 feet, in your legs. And getting too far behind too early is a mistake for most people. Some people have the speed to like make that up, which is where I think that like road marathon background or the half marathon really can help if you're not as good of a climber as say like Patrick Gimneno. But it's really hard to make up that ground after you've already lost it that early.
Dani, anything you want to add?
Yes, I will say if your favorite thing is downhill, this race doesn't suit that skill set. The downhill is short and quick, and we get some fun sprint finishes, but if you identify as like, oh, I always make up time on the downhill, this race will be incredibly difficult for you, because EmKay's point, it's 98% climbing and 2% finishing on the quick bit. Yeah.
So tough. Yeah, I think maybe a good way to drive the point home, I was thinking back to last year's Sierre Zinal, and I remember on the live stream just watching Killian run away from the guys very early on the climb. And I think he said after the fact, or maybe he wrote about it, that he knew he needed a gap on the climb because people like Milimani and Patrick had just more of that pure raw leg speed than him. In the fast half marathon, he knew he needed a margin on the Africans in order to win. And of course, like we were just joking about, it did come down to 2 seconds. Milimani was right on Killian's heels, a sprint finish at Sierre Zinal. So anyway, interesting to see like him needing to play that card early, like play to his strengths in a way that strategically set him up to win. And maybe we'll see that this weekend again. So let's start talking about sort of some of the favorites. And we don't need to go through like all 100 of the favorites in the field on both sides here. But I think one major story that is worth spending a minute on is Katie Schide is in the race. And honestly, I could see her doing really well. I went back and checked. She has raced Sierre Zinal in the past. She was 19th place in 2021. She ran 3 hours and 19 minutes. I wouldn't be surprised to see her significantly improve upon that result. Dani, anything you want to say about the great Katie Schide?
Number one rule, never count Katie Schide out. Like, never count her out. I mean, we saw at OCC a couple years ago. She ended up placing second. Second, and she ran cross-country races this whole winter. Like, the speed is there. She can do everything. And what's fun for me and EmKay is we just did this conversation about a versatile goat, like what makes a versatile goat. And I think if Katie Schide finishes in the top 3 here, she is finally amongst very rare company, which is Ruth Croft, which Ruth Croft is currently the only athlete to ever podium at a Golden Trail World Series race, OCC, CCC, UTMB, and Western States. Ruth has actually won all of those except UTMB, which is the last one. So yeah, if Katie hits this podium, like, she is forever, I think, in the versatile goat category.
Yeah.
So that's what really, really excites me. But it'll be interesting because, EmKay and I kind of chatting offline, like, this is a tough year to be the top American when you have, all cylinders firing on a Gibson. Lauren Gregory turning up the heat every race that she lines up at. Recently just had her first Golden Trail World Series win. So, a lot of years I'd be like, yeah, Katie's going to be the top American dog, but it's going to be tough this year. That is tough company.
That's what I was going to go to next. EmKay, you could share a little bit more. But if we look at the Americans in the field, right, it's probably Anna Gibson, Lauren Gregory, Allie Mack. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see Katie be the top American. It'd be amazing.
Yeah, I do think Anna Gibson is the American to beat right now. Like, she was 6th here last year at her debut at Sierre Zinal. And I have a hard time seeing her off of the podium, to be honest, like after the year she's having right now. So I'm super stoked to see that. But at the same time, we're talking about this possibility of these women being on the podium. Dani highlighted in our notes over here that of the top 10, only 3, maybe 4 are not returning from last year.
Yeah.
It's, and I mean, the men's side is the same. It's like 8 of the top 10 are returning to this race. So it's going to be exciting.
Yeah. Anna is kind of like Jenn Lichter, and just, it seems like having a very special season and kind of emerging, having a breakthrough into discovering new fitness, new talents as they both build experience in their young and very successful careers. Okay, so sticking with the women here, share a few more about like your top favorites coming into the race. Obviously, we do have Joylene Chepneno coming back to defend her win. Again, the great Kenyan athlete, part of this Milimani crew. Share a few words, Dani, about Joylene specifically, and then we can start ticking through some of the other women's favorites.
I mean, Joylene hasn't lined up for many trail races, but in the races she has lined up, she's won nearly every single one. She won Sierre Zinal last year in her debut trail race. She then went on to win the prologue and the final at the Golden Trail World Series final. She recently won Mont Blanc Marathon in her first marathon distance. And then she lined up for UTMB race where I believe she actually ended up being second, but that qualified her for OCC this year. And so, yeah, this is going to be a great double for her, starting with Sierre Zinal before OCC. And if you win this on your debut, obviously you have all the skills and now she has more experience. I think it's just a matter of dealing with the pressure. She's had, the grace of newness and showing up kind of, as the new person in town. But I think I would bet she's going to be on this podium regardless.
EmKay, start ticking through some of the other women's favorites here who the audience might notice on the live stream this weekend.
A couple names that I'm excited about. Jade Belsberg. I'm pretty sure this is her first time running Sierre Zinal. So that's pretty exciting because she has been hitting like these Golden Trail races pretty well. Madalena Floria is maybe not racing, but if she does, she's consistently been in that top 10 ever since she started a couple years ago. Caroline Kimutai, another new East African name. She has not run Sierre Zinal before, but she came out swinging at Four Sisters and beat all those women who have a lot of experience in Golden Trail. Falaris Kaseng, it was back. She was 4th in 2024, 2nd in 2022. Maud Matisse is on this start list. I don't know if she's running. I don't know if she's healthy, but if she is still the course record holder. And so you don't count Maud Matisse out on winning this race even, at this point. Obviously
she was unbeatable for a stretch for a couple of years. Nobody could touch her.
I think her record's from 2019, if I wrote this down. Yeah, 2019. So Killian broke the record last year, but Maud's is still standing from 2019. Aurea Liassi is another young gun in this sport. She's only 24. She was 14th in 2023, but she was 8th last year. Lauren Gregory. Her Sierre Zinal debut too. I'm so freaking stoked about this one because I feel like the longer the race, the better for Lauren at this point. And Sierre Zinal is like just long enough. It's like 19 miles that I think this is really going to be a great race for her. And as we all know, she's an incredible climber. And then one other name I want to highlight is Laura Hottenrott. She's a German athlete. She was an Olympian in the marathon. And this is her Sierre Zinal debut, but she recently won the Eiger 50K and did really well at the Zermatt Marathon. So
very, very cool. Dani, anything else you want to add on the women before we move to the men?
Not much. I just want to mention that Maud has won the race 4 times, and that's pretty historic. So I don't know. She's one to never bet against, but yeah, it'll be interesting. I think the East Africans are definitely changing the way that all these races are run. It's a lot more of a hot pace earlier on, and we saw Killian battle with that last year. So yeah, before we get into the men, it'll be interesting to see if the women start to mimic that a little bit more, because in the past couple of years, it's kind of like 2 or 3 shoot off the front and there's a chase pack. This year, I imagine we'll have a much bigger, front pushing pack of like 10 women or so.
Yeah. So EmKay mentioned that Madalena Floria is sort of a question mark at this point. I think she posted that she's dealing with some issues and still undecided whether she would make it to the start line. She is leading the Golden Trail World Series standings right now. And I believe in second place is Sarah Alonso, who posted she's dealing with some injury and won't be competing for at least a short stretch here. I think both are non-serious, so hopefully they can navigate those issues and get back to start lines quickly, but still TBD whether Madalena Floria will take the start line, which means that it could be that we see a new leader in the standings after the race this weekend going into the world final in October. Just interesting series-wide standings for our audience to keep an eye on. And Naomi Lang, we should just mention, won last week at Pitz Alpine, this UK young gun superstar. I'm going to try and get Naomi on the podcast too, learn a little bit more about her, but it'd be incredible if she was able to follow up that win at Pitz Alpine with another top 5 or podium type performance at Sierre Zinal. Moving over to the men now, one sort of similar to Katie, feel like we should give a quick shout out to Francesco Pupi, who is also very versatile, and much like both Dani and EmKay, he's starting to experiment with longer distances, but still keeping his roots here in sub ultra. I feel like he's been desperate for a good one at Sierre Zinal. He's undefeated so far this season. I think he's done like 5 for 5. Probably the highlight of his season so far was his win and huge course record at the Canyons 100K in his 100K debut. I know he's targeting CCC, but Francesco Pupi's on the Sierre Zinal start list. Do we think he could be dangerous? Dani, you can get us started.
It's a little tough because he is coming off a pretty big Hoka camp. Like, he was getting after it with, the biggest names in our sport, some of the biggest names in our sport. But, something about me is thinking, is this his year because, his focus is all in on this double, the CCC World Championship double. Has said it multiple times over and over again, like that's where he's putting all his eggs in his basket. And so maybe a little bit of weight lifted off of Sierre Zinal and suddenly, he's the one controlling the race. He's another person I just never count out, but it's going to be really tough, especially when a lot of these men, especially from Team Run Together and the Milimani runners, have been running super sharpening events all year, i.e. Golden Trail and the Valsier World Mountain Running Cup. Like Valsier is just VKs every single weekend. And so to them starting this race, they're like, oh, we've done this, 5 out of the last 8 weeks in a row.
Yeah. So cool. Well, I'm going to personally be rooting for Francesco this weekend and hope he can lace it.
Yes.
I don't know. To me, it feels like with his main focus being on CCC, it could open up, there's no pressure on him right now.
Exactly.
He could finally have his really dream Sierre Zinal race. So shout out to Poopy. All right, EmKay, tick through some of the men's favorites for our audience here.
Yeah. I mean, I think a pretty obvious favorite in most people's eyes was going to be Philemon Ambogo Kiriago. He won this race in 2023 and then finished 2 seconds behind Killian. Last year, both of those performances being the highest ranked ITRA races in a while. Patrick Kipnieno was second in 2022, second in 2023, third last year. Is he going to get his win at Sierre Zinal at some point? We'll see. Another Sierre Zinal winner, Andrew Blanes, was second at Zagama this year. He won in 2022 in a very unfortunate way. He finished second to somebody who tested positive for a banned substance after the race. So I imagine this is his first time coming back since then. He's probably itching to actually win this race fair and square instead of having to get it handed down to him later. El Hussein, really kind of big question mark here. He was 40th in 2023, 115th in 2022, 31st in 2019. Hasn't had the best days here, but I don't know, at this point, I could see him having a significantly better time at these races than he would have, even 2 years ago. Roberto Alez, I'm not saying your name right, Roberto, I'm so sorry, but he is new to the trail scene. He's a Spanish track runner, 3K steeplechaser. He was 8th at the European Championships at some point. He ran 63 and a half last year, 2:18 in the marathon this year. Don't count a runner with that kind of speed out, whether they've done trail races or not. Leon Engermund, back at the Sierre Zinal start line. This is his first Sierre Zinal since 2015, actually, where he finished 8th place. Roberto De Lorenzi is back. He was 5th in 2023 and 2024. And this is one of those races where even if Francesco, even if Roberto's not having that great of a year, he's going to show up to Sierre Zinal and have a pretty good day. And he's Swiss, so there's even more pressure there. And then on the American side, Christian Allen didn't have that great of a day at Austria, but Dani and I learned after Sunapee that you don't actually count Christian Allen out for having a bad race. So he could definitely show up here and have a really good day. This is a perfect course for him if he's on.
That's what I was going to say. He won the Broken Arrow Ascent. Plus, obviously, we know he's got the leg speed, and that seems to be the killer combination that you need to win this
race.
Exactly.
Taylor Stack, obviously on a heater right now, just podiumed at Austria. So I think those are probably top guys in my head. Any more from you, Dani?
I just wanted to highlight that Andrew Blanes, the one who eventually was the winner of 2022, he did debut in a 2:09 end of last year at Valencia. So again, I just think he's one to watch. And I believe that was, the 6th fastest debut ever by a Spanish male runner in the marathon. So the guy can do it all, especially after a podium finish at Zagama this year. And we did interview him for our newsletter. And he did say this is a big focus of his this year. So I would definitely imagine him, very, very strong podium contender.
Very, very interesting. Yes, Dion, it's interesting to see his name on the start list too. And I think I read somewhere that he's going for the 3-peat at the Short Trail World Championship in September. So this will be a good indication of Stion's fitness as he works his way back into competition after his unfortunate run-in with the anti-doping authorities last year. We don't need to get into that here, but a lot of great storylines. He had
a very strong finish at Giro de Mont behind Davide Magnini.
And I was going to say Davide Magnini is probably a big name that we're missing from this list, actually, as an OCC tune-up.
Yeah. Shout out to Davide, great Italian. But El Hussein, I just want to highlight this for the audience too. Of course, the reigning trail runner of the year, leading the Golden Trail World Series standings this year. He won, obviously, the entire series last year. But similar to Remy Bonnet and kind of like Francesco Pupi, they haven't quite had their day at Sierre Zinal yet. So El Hussein, who has very few blemishes on his resume, especially in the last few years, except for Sierre Zinal. He's, I'm sure, looking for redemption this weekend. That'll be really fun to follow along and watch. Cool. Any closing comments from you guys? I think maybe let's spend a couple of minutes. I know you're both preparing for big moments in your lives, different things. Dani's getting ready for CCC, your 100K debut, and EmKay is in your third trimester. So Dani, share a little bit about where you're at with your training, how you're feeling ahead of CCC, and then we'll get EmKay's contribution here as we close.
Yeah, it's actually been really hard these past couple weeks because I broke a toe in my right foot a couple weeks ago. And just walking around the house in toe spreaders, watch out, guys, those are lethal. And so, yeah, just trying to, I say salvage fitness, but I'm trying to maintain it. That's the more optimistic lens. And I'm supposed to be heading out to Europe next week. So I'm throwing everything I can at it, trying to remain as optimistic as possible. Lucky me, I have a great team in my corner, including Coach Tom Evans, who, is in my ear, helping me kind of like get through this, hopefully the last bit of it. But yeah, not the buildup I was expecting for my 100K debut, to say the least. But hopefully it's just a light distraction, until it comes to the race day. And just trying to get to that start line as healthy as possible.
Good luck. I'm sure you're going to do fine, but yeah, good luck with recovery and training. And you're going to be on some of our trailgating stuff at UTMB too. So we're excited for that.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited for that as well.
Okay. EmKay, fill us in. How's preparation for motherhood? You said you're swearing off running up hills going forward.
I say that today, but then I'll probably run flat one day and be like, this is boring. And I'll go suffer uphill again the next day. But yeah, I feel like within the last 2 weeks, running uphill has become significantly harder. I am trying to convince myself to back off of running a little bit. I actually started swimming this week, which is really exciting. I haven't been in the pool in 8 years or something. And it was nice to just exercise and get my heart rate up without feeling like I was beating the shit out of my body. So yeah, Tommy and I just finished painting our nursery last week. This week we're having our first baby shower. So things are getting really real. We get to do another size check at our next OB-GYN appointment because at our 20-week checkup, he measured large. So we're going to see where he's at here in a couple weeks, which I'm excited about because not everybody gets to see their baby again after 20 weeks until they're out in the world. So yeah, things are moving along here, but yeah, I might have to become a flatlander for this third trimester.
Yes. Well, before you know it, you're going to be planning a third birthday party for your kid, like I am this weekend. My son turns 3 next week.
Happy
and we're
birthday,
having a little
Rose.
get together this weekend.
Happy birthday.
And he's definitely on the big side too, EmKay. So yeah, we've got big boys in our family here. Yeah. Great. Well, thank you both. You guys are fantastic. It's so fun to do these shows together and collaborate whenever we do. We appreciate all the sub-ultra distance expertise specifically. And let's do it again soon.
Yeah, thanks for having us.